Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to At America. At America is the U.S. Embassy's American Center, and our mission is to provide a space for young Indonesians to learn more about the United States. And hello, my name is Patricia Elizabeth. I'm one of the e-guide here. Today, I want to welcome our audience today from President University. How are you, everyone? Good? Yes, glad to hear that, because today we're come back to our 10th session of our series, Meet the U.S. Embassy. In this session, we're going to hear directly from the U.S. diplomat to gain insights into how U.S. initiatives contribute to strengthening partnership and create opportunities to build our relationship. Without any further ado, I will invite the moderator and speaker to be seated on the stage. First, we have our amazing moderator. She is an acting public affairs officer of U.S. Embassy Jakarta. Everyone, please give a warmest welcome to Emily Yasmin Norris. And our eminent speaker for today, he is a Chargé d'Affaires of the U.S. Embassy Jakarta. Everyone, please give a big round of applause to Michael F. Kleine. I give it to you, Bu Emily.
Thank you. Welcome, everybody. It is my distinct pleasure to be up here today with our Chargé d'Affaires, Michael Kleine, who has had a career of over 20 years in the Foreign Service, serving in such diverse places as Europe, in Kosovo, in Australia, in Laos, and is himself a former lawyer who became a diplomat and has been in Indonesia now for over 2 years, and will be speaking to us today about the U.S.-Indonesian partnership and relationship, and also his own career as a diplomat. We are very honored to have him here with us today. Without further ado, CDA Kleine, the floor is yours.
Thank you very much, Emily. Nice to see everybody. Really, really glad to see such a big turnout today. And I apologize for keeping people waiting. The traffic is still something that I'm just not used to, and it seems especially thick today. It's as if Coldplay is back. You know, it's just like gridlock out there. May I stand?
Yes.
I just feel a little more. Been sitting in the car now, so I feel good standing. So I've been here in Indonesia for 2 years, but my first time in Indonesia was about 10 years ago or so, back when I was working in Laos. I was in Vientiane, beautiful country, but it's landlocked, no oceans there. And so I was just feeling stir crazy. And so my family and I put together this trip to go to Lombok. And it was beautiful. We flew out there and sat on the beach. I remember one evening I was there with my wife. We were sitting there in the sand, and our kids were real young at the time. And they were playing there in the water. And my wife and I were looking at each other, and the sun's setting, and are like, you know, wouldn't it be wonderful if we could actually work at a place like this? And I'm here to tell you that dreams do come true, because here we got the dream assignment to come work in Indonesia 2 years ago, and it really was a dream that came true. And for the past 2 years, I've had a chance to not just be here in Jakarta, but travel around the beautiful country and learn a little bit about the diversity of Indonesia, the different places of Indonesia. And so one of the things that has been a common thread through all of our travels through the country is how friendly people are and how open they are and how delicious the food is. And every time I had like the spiciest food I ever thought I'd never eat, I try another sambal and it's even more spicy. So it's just been 2 years of discovery and joy for us. But I know I'm talking to a group of lawyers. Who wants to be a lawyer here? Yeah. All right, be proud. So I was a lawyer also, as Emily mentioned. And I can tell you that sometimes career paths aren't linear. And I went to undergrad. The system's a little bit different in the U.S. You go to undergrad, and then you go to law school. And I was an undergrad, and from day one, I wanted to be a lawyer. And I took all like pre-law classes, went to law school, and I became a lawyer. And I was practicing in DC for about 5.5 years or so. And can I get serious? This is really kind of a serious thing.
This is supposed to be serious fun. So serious is good.
All right. Well, this is so I'm a lawyer in DC, and I'm in a big law firm, and I am doing kind of fun law work. Um, but my mentor in the law firm, who had the office right next to me, I was about 28, 29 at the time. My mentor is about 36 or so. Had a terrible car crash and died. It was awful. And I came to work that next day, and his office was next to mine, and it was empty. And this is somebody all day, every day, I would go into his office, and suddenly he wasn't there. And it made me totally rethink my life. And I was wondering, did I want to be a lawyer because I wanted to be a lawyer? What was I doing? And what I realized in the particular type of law that I was doing, I was working in a big law firm, and I was basically working for big corporations, helping really rich corporations get richer. And that's not something that I really wanted to do with my life if my life could end arbitrarily one day like that. And I had a lot of soul searching at that point. And I decided, no, that's not what I wanted to do. I wanted to do something that would make the world a better place. And what I came up with was Peace Corps. So I went to the Peace Corps office in Washington, D.C., and I said, yeah, I'm this lawyer, and I'm interested in changing my career. I want to join the Peace Corps. And they said, okay, come to an orientation session. So I went to an orientation session for the Peace Corps. And I go in, I'm still a lawyer at this point. I'm coming back from a deposition. I'm dressed like this, and I've got my briefcase, and I'm running late, just like I am today. And I go, and I'm in this room, and full of young people who are listening about the Peace Corps. And I remember the person briefing was kind of looking at me, and I'm looking at her, and she starts saying, well, Peace Corps, we're not looking for people with liberal arts degrees to go to the developing world to teach English. We need people with real skills. We need people that know something about animal husbandry and irrigation and construction. And I'm a lawyer. I don't know any of this stuff. And so I kind of slink out of that room. And then I heard something about the State Department and that they have a test to join the Foreign Service. And so I went and I sat for that test. And I passed. And it was the greatest thing that ever happened to me. I joined the Foreign Service. And one of my early tours was to go to Kosovo, out in the Balkans, after a terrible war out there. And Kosovo at that time was having their very first elections. And one of my jobs was to monitor elections in a very, very small village out in the countryside in the border near Albania. We traveled out there, and I'm in a classroom where we're watching the voting take place. And it was small. It was like this big. And I was one of the observers, and we were all sitting along the edge of basically a one-room schoolhouse. And it was like me and some of the UN people and some of the Serb NGOs and Albanian NGOs, lots of observers. And in the middle of the room, there was this plastic box, and that was the voting box. And then over on that side, they had it's like a shower curtain. That was the voting booth. And so people got their ballots, they went, closed the curtain, filled it out, and then went to the plastic box in the middle of the room and put the ballot in. This was going on all day. And toward the end of the day, we're all sitting here, and this old man comes in the entrance of the room, and he looked like he'd been walking all day to get there, and he probably had been. And he was wearing like the shepherd's hat, and he had a cane, and he walks there, and he gets his ballot, goes to the shower booth over there, closes the curtain. He's in there for a long time, and everybody's kind of like, what's going on? And he finally comes out, and he's got his cane, and the box is here, and he shoves that ballot into the plastic box. And then he picks it up. He takes one hand here, lifts the box above his head, and all the people over here, the observers, the people are jumping up, screaming and shouting, like, hey, hey. And you have this old man, takes the box, and he kisses it. Puts it down, and you could see this tear going down the side of his face. It was the first time that old man had ever voted in his life, and it meant so much to him. And I've always kept that image in my head because, one, it solidified, yeah, this is what I want to be doing. I want to be promoting things like democracy. And that's also one of the reasons why I'm pretty excited to be in Indonesia right now, because we're going to have one of the biggest elections ever held ever in history going on in February of next year in this country. And I'm so excited to see that joy and love of democracy playing itself out in real time. I've spoken too long. I apologize, but I get carried away with this stuff. So thank you.
No, that's a beautiful story. Indonesia and the United States are two of the world's largest democracies. It's part of the foundation of our relationship. So that's really wonderful. Thank you for sharing that with us. I hope everyone takes that story to heart. Before we continue, we're also going to do, we're going to have time for questions and answers. We're going to do also some quizzes and some informational pieces throughout the program today so that we can hear more great stories and talk about the relationship, but also test some of your knowledge about the U.S.-Indonesia partnership as we go forward. So I'm going to take a water break and turn it back over.
Okay, so prepare your gadget again. We're going to play Menti. Menti.com. You can go to any browser, www.menti.com, or you can scan the barcode over here. It is similar to Kahoot. It is similar to Kahoot. And if you're already in our homepage, you can enter the code 65302515. And you can click the thumbs up if you're already in our homepage.
Also, democracy in action. Everybody's going to have their voice heard right now.
Yes. It's okay, we're still waiting, and I think good to go. And we're going to start our Menti question. Okay, be prepared. Trade between the United States and Indonesia supports job creation. How much did trade between the United States and Indonesia grow in 2022? Is it 5.5%? Is it 17.05%? Or 21.75%? Take a guess. A little bit background for our audience, Emily. There are 19% low, majoring in law school.
90% low.
Yeah, I think 90% law and 10% is international relations.
So for those of you studying law, a lot of you didn't raise your hand. So maybe you're going to become diplomats like CPA
Yes.
Kleine.
Sorry to take you out. Didn't mean to talk anybody out of the legal profession. I know a lot of good lawyers. But not for everybody.
It does set you up well, though, the skill set, analytical thinking, writing.
Completely true. And there's tons of things you can do with a law degree, and I just kind of went down maybe the wrong path there. But yeah, it's a great, great profession.
I think we're good to have the answer. All of you answer B, 17.05%. Let's see the correct answer. The correct answer is C. The United States is one of Indonesia's largest investors. The United States is the 6th largest foreign investor in Indonesia, and two-way goods trade increased by 25% to 44.25 billion US dollar in 2022, and there's still room to grow.
Can I jump up again?
Yes.
because this slide drives me crazy. It does, and I apologize to keep jumping up. But this is great. The trade is going up like this, 22%. That's a lot, and showing a lot of interest in our companies and investing here, and a lot of markets in Indonesia for Indonesian exports. But what I'm focused on is that last line in terms of there's still room to grow. If you compare Indonesia with the rest of ASEAN, in the past 10 years, growth in trade between the U.S. and the rest of ASEAN has gone up about 115%. And with Indonesia, about 50%. So Indonesia's lagging behind the rest of ASEAN in terms of growth and trade. And then if you focus in on specific countries, it's $44 billion in bilateral trade between the U.S. and Indonesia. It's about $144 billion between U.S. and Vietnam. It's about $80 billion between U.S. and Thailand, $80 billion between U.S. and Malaysia. There's so much more that we can do with Indonesia. And that's what that's a lot of what we do at the U.S. Embassy. We have a lot of people working on trade, a lot of people working on investment. That 25% is great, but it's just the start. And I think that we're going to be surpassing the other countries, hopefully soon. And a lot of the focus, you may have heard that President Jokowi was just in Washington, and he was there talking to President Biden, elevating the relationship to a comprehensive strategic partnership. A lot of that is trade and investment to boost these numbers, and that's going to grow jobs and opportunities in both countries. So I'll take my seat again. Sorry.
No, thank you. That's absolutely true. The room for growth, right? Maybe you can tell us a little bit more about the President Jokowi's visit to Washington and what that was for, and what does it mean, this comprehensive strategic partnership?
Comprehensive strategic partnership. Sorry.
Please, I think it's great. Maybe
I've just got to spring out of the chair because these things I feel really strongly about. Comprehensive strategic partnership is kind of new for the United States. When it was announced here in Jakarta, when Vice President Harris was here for the East Asia Summit, it was the very first comprehensive strategic partnership that the United States announced with any country in the whole world. This is a new thing for us. And it was the first one announced out of the White House also. It's the idea of taking a relationship that's very close, very strong, very good, to a level that, it's not a treaty ally, and Indonesia has a very proud tradition of being a non-aligned nation, so it's not going to be a treaty ally with anybody. But we wanted to come up with a new category of relationship that takes account of countries like Indonesia that are non-aligned, but boost opportunities in trade, boost opportunities in education, boost opportunities in people-to-people exchanges to give us more of a chance not just to trade goods and services, but to meet each other and exchange ideas and exchange values and exchange experiences. And that's what the comprehensive strategic partnership in its essence is all about. Thanks.
That's really great. It's a new chapter in our relationship, which has been for almost 75 years we've had relations with Indonesia now. So it's a really big step forward, and there's still room to grow. That's the takeaway from this one, guys. Definitely room to grow in all aspects of a relationship. Maybe we can take our next quiz.
Okay, next question. Be ready. You can scan the barcode over here, and you can enter the code 22099813. And again, you can click the thumbs up if you're already in our homepage.
It's great that both Indonesia and the U.S. are going to have elections this year. Biggest democracies, biggest elections. Very exciting time. So, if you have questions about any of that, we can hold them for the end and continue that discussion. It's such an incredible story of your experience with seeing democracy firsthand on your first assignment. Yes.
That was my second assignment. That was my second assignment. First assignment was in Ho Chi Minh City in Vietnam. And that was my first introduction to Southeast Asia.
Okay, I think we're good to go. Let's see the question. Which countries are the largest democracies in the world? Bu Ebli already mentioned. Is it A, India, United States, and Indonesia? Is it B, Australia, India, or United States? Or C, Brazil, United States, and Indonesia? Quite tricky between India and Brazil over here. Yeah. Is it gonna be a tie? Okay. Still leading in option number A. Okay, I think let's see the answer.
Switching their votes back and forth? Is that what's going on?
Like it.
Yeah.
Some is going up and going down. Guys, once you vote, you vote. You can't keep switching your votes. That's not how democracy works.
I think it's gotta be tie or not. Okay. Let's see the answer. The answer is A. India is the largest democracy. The United States is the second largest, and Indonesia is the third largest in terms of population. So as democracies, the United States and Indonesia share many of the same values. This is reflected in our two nations' mottos, Bhinneka Tunggal Ika and E Pluribus Unum, which both mean, in translation, unity in diversity and from the many one. Back to you, Emily.
Yeah, it's wonderful as a diplomat to come to Indonesia and serve in another country that has such a strong experience with democracy. CDA Kleine, could you tell us a little bit about some of your experience seeing the diversity of Indonesia across the country and what that means also for our relationship because of the breadth and diversity of our two countries?
Yeah, that's something that's really striking to any foreigner that comes to Indonesia, and that is if you're in Jakarta, you see Jakarta. But if you go to Bali, if you go to Lombok, if you go to East Nusa Tenggara, if you go to Papua, it feels like often you're feeling different countries. But then when you scratch the surface a little bit, you pick up, again, those similarities. And that similarity is like we're different. We have different cultures. We're very proud of these different cultures. We're proud of our different traditions. We're proud of where we're from. But we're Indonesian, and we're proud of Indonesia. And that's something that you see in America also. And as you travel around the U.S., very, very different from one state to another, one city to another. But the underlying pride of all being one country, one nation, one people is also there. So it's that similarity does jump out.
Yeah, it's something really incredible to see across Indonesia. And one of the things I've always found quite striking, because we see it in the U.S., is this concept of tolerance and freedom of expression and freedom of religion that is in both of our constitutions. It's one of the areas, human rights and supporting Indonesian democracy is one of the main pillars of our relationship right now. Is that correct?
Yes, absolutely. And I keep thinking about the election coming up in February, and just the scale of it is mind-boggling. And I was reading about the election workers from the last election and how many people died of exhaustion counting ballots. And that's commitment to democracy. And it's something that draws the United States to Indonesia. And it's a common bond that I love to see.
Yeah, definitely a common trait and fundamental part of our bilateral relationship for sure. Let's go to the.
Can I ask a question?
Yes.
Because again, this is my first election here. Is voting mandatory in Indonesia? Yes.
Wait, we have a yes and we have a no.
Yeah. All right.
Yes.
We need a lawyer. Who's
a lawyer?
So if you do not vote, what happens?
Oh, okay. So it's okay not to vote, but if you suppress voting or tell other people not to vote, that's illegal. Is that correct? So you don't have to, some countries do that. If you don't vote, you have to pay a fine or there's a punishment for it. In Indonesia and the U.S., neither of our democracies operate that way. Voting is of free will, and you're encouraged to do it, but not required by law. What's fascinating is how high voter turnout is in Indonesia. We don't have, I don't remember the exact number, but I know it's less than Indonesia, our voter turnout in the U.S. So maybe something we can learn from Indonesia is that great support for people going out and voting on election day.
And I saw a different system. In my last assignment, I was in Australia. In Australia, voting is mandatory. You have to vote, or if you don't vote, you have pay a big fine. But everybody loves to vote in Australia. Anybody been to Australia? A couple people. It's a funny place. Generally, it's a funny place. But on voting day, they give out free sausages at the ballot box. And so if you go, and everybody goes to vote. Everybody goes. And yeah, they like to vote, but they really want that free hot dog. And so and they're also allowed to bring pets to the voting booth too. So people bring their dogs and have a hot dog. And anyway.
That's like a big election party. That sounds quite
It
fun,
is a party,
actually.
yeah.
Maybe something to think about for our elections next year. All right, let's go to the next Mentimeter quiz for everybody.
Okay, we'll go to the next topic, climate change and environment.
Whoa. Okay,
Wow.
that
I
one's
think-
getting a reaction. Clearly,
Yeah,
we need to talk
they're
about
getting
this
excited.
one. I mean, it is very exciting area for us to look at collectively. Very important for the future of all of our countries.
Sure is.
Yes, you can go to, again, www.menti.com, and you can enter the code 66774528. And I think we're good to go. Let's see the question. What was the theme of the APEC, Asia-Pacific Economic Cooperation, Economic Leaders Meeting in San Francisco from November 16 until 17? Is it A, creating a resilient and sustainable future for all? Is it B, one Earth, one family, one future? Or is it C, recover together, recover stronger? Or D, I think. This is open and connect.
Wow.
Strong questions in option number
Does
A.
everybody know this?
Okay, I think we're good to go to see the answer. Yes, of course. The answer is A. Throughout 2023, the United States worked with APEC economies to support sustainability through a focus on a just energy transition, to build a digital Pacific by advancing digital skills and connectivity, and to promote resilience and inclusion through trade and investment, gender equity, food security, anti-corruption, supply chains, and support for micro, small, and medium-sized enterprises. Back to you.
Thanks. So clearly this is a topic of interest to everybody. I mean, climate change is something, and the fact that is something very important to all of us, and international forums like APEC, it's become the most important topic. CDA Kleine, can you maybe talk a little bit about how we use our partnership, Indonesia and the U.S., or through international forum and through international programs that we have together jointly to address this issue of climate change? What does that actually mean when we're talking about these types of global projects?
For climate change, something we're doing here with Indonesia is the Just
Energy Transition Partnership.
And we get to that in a second, but something that's like catching my eye here is Digital Pacific and Digital Divide. And that's something we're spending a lot of time also, particularly in Indonesia, because we see it as such a path forward in a country with 17,000 islands to be able to leapfrog some of the development challenges of bringing goods and services and medical services and all sorts of just basic education to remote places. And bridging the digital divide is the way to do that through mobile networks. And Indonesia is at the cutting edge of that. And it also in terms of supporting micro, small, and medium-sized enterprises. In Indonesia, About 60, 70% of these small, medium-sized enterprises are owned by women. And we're doing a lot of work in fintech in order to enable the small and medium-sized enterprises to be able to put their businesses online, to do their financial work online. And by doing that, we know we are helping the small, medium-sized businesses out there owned by women, and that's going to build a more inclusive economic future. And so that's something that we're really, really excited on this point. With the environment, Just Energy
Transition Partnership.
There are only a few of these in the world. South Africa here, maybe another one that we're working on with Vietnam. And the idea is to try to create an environment that the private sector and the trillions of dollars that that can unlock to help countries like Indonesia transform into a greener future. And the one going on in Indonesia now is the biggest in the world. And we're very excited about it. It's the plan. There was a big announcement last week about the plan to make this happen. And it's to turn around a ship this size, it takes a lot of work. And what we're learning is it's not as easy as unplugging coal-fired electric plants. If we did that, the skies would clear up the next day, but we know that you need electricity to run a country. And so the plan has different strands of elements to it. One is to unplug the big coal plants, but also to build renewable resources that are like variable, like the wind and solar, those that are stable, like geothermal, and build the structure and transmission lines to get it out. So it's stuff that we're working on very, very closely with Indonesia that we hope will set a model not just for Southeast Asia, but the whole world. So I was about to jump out of my chair for that one too, but
I think it's great. I mean, this is the topic to jump out of your chair for, climate change, right? Because it's all of our futures all together, and that's why we have the Just Energy Transition Partnership, or as JETP, as we call it for short, that we've launched with Indonesia and other international partners to try and tackle this very, very important issue. But I'll turn it over to our e-guide for the next question.
Yes, we'll move on to our next topic. Okay, Indonesia and the International Partner Group, co-led by the United States and Japan, just launched the CIPP as part of Indonesia's Just Energy Transition Partnership, or JETP. I think, yeah, that's before. And then what does CIPP stand for? Is it A, Comprehensive Investment and Policy Plan? Is it B, Collaborative Initiative for Partnership and Policy? Or is it C, Climate Impact Priority Plan? Going strong on option number B.
I have to say I'm really impressed with all of you for knowing all of these important international agreements that are happening. I guess studying the law then.
Yeah. I think they're studying in school for this. Yeah, I think a lot of acronym is also like confusing, but they have good memories.
This is amazing.
Yeah.
Okay.
I think we're good to go. The correct answer is A. The Comprehensive Investment and Policy Plan, CIPP, is a roadmap for the government of Indonesia and the IPG to achieve the objectives laid out in the JETP joint statement announced at the G20 Leaders Summit last year in Bali. Back to you, Bu Emily.
Yes, thank you. So this is exactly what we were talking about, this kind of international agreement that focuses on assisting Indonesia to address climate change because it's a global issue and something that we have to work together on. Can you talk about some of maybe the other collaborative areas between the United States and Indonesia beyond just economics and climate change? What are some of the other parts of our relationship where we're also working together to tackle global challenges?
There are a ton of them, and it can be now military is one of them. We have a very, very close relationship between the military in the United States and the military in Indonesia. Every year we have a big exercise called Super Garuda Shield. And it's not just bilateral. There are about 12 other countries that work together on this. And the idea is just making sure that we have collectively awareness, maritime domain awareness is what they call it, of who's in international waters and helping Indonesia understand who's in Indonesian waters, whether it's for fishing or transit or for other purposes. Again, 17,000 islands here, that's a lot of coastline, and keeping track of what's out there is tough. And part of our mill-mill relationship is trying to work together with Indonesian counterparts and understanding what's going on in Indonesian waters. That's one of them.
Yeah, and is there anyone here studying maritime law or any of the international law agreements? So this is Indonesia. There's still a lot of discussion and legal aspects to ensuring that a country maintains territorial integrity over its maritime domain. So this is a very important area, and this is something the United States is very supportive of when it comes to Indonesia, our relationship with Indonesia.
Yeah, so that's one of them. And again, the scope of the relationship is so large. It goes from military to military relations, also even things like museum to museum relationships. And we're working together as part of that agreement that President Jakarta and President Biden signed in Washington a couple of weeks ago, was talking about a relationship between the museums in the United States and the National Museum here, and working with Indonesia and rebuilding the National Museum here in Jakarta that had a terrible fire a few months ago. And we're working with the Ministry of Cultural Affairs to build it up bigger and better, and including more outreach spaces like this for people to gather and talk about cultural issues. Those are the sorts of things that we're working on together with Indonesia all the time.
Yes, that's really great. And I always like to say the thing that underpins all of our cooperation is really education. And so I'd like to turn it back over to our moderator for the next question, because this is really about the people-to-people relationship and the education connections that build everything else in our relationship.
True.
Okay, we move to our next topic, which also interesting. It's study in the USA. You can go again to scan this barcode over here, or you can enter the code 35317137. Does anyone here wants to study in the US? Everyone.
Wow.
Good. We have over 4,000 universities in the United States, so
That's
I'm
great.
sure you can find one that has what you want to study.
That's great. Okay, I think we're good to go. Let's see the questions for study in the USA. How many Indonesians are currently studying in the United States? Is it 1,400? Is it 8,500? Is it 230,000? Or is it 10,000? Take a guess. It's going to be a tie between 8,000 and 230,000. Okay.
Good.
8,500. I think it's more than that.
Another area where there's always room for growth.
A room for growth, yes.
So,
Okay, let's see the answer. The answer is B. Approximately is 8,500 Indonesians are studying at the U.S. colleges and universities today. The number of Indonesian students studying in the United States increased by 5.8% according to the Institute of International Education's annual Open Doors report. So back to you, Bu Emily.
I need to get up on this one again. This was like that first slide where I see it and I think, God, we could do so much better, people. We really can. 8,500 is nothing. It really is. And there's so much room there. And I ask people, like, why this is. How come it's, considering the size of Indonesia and the size of the United States. And something that comes up is, well, I apply and I didn't get in. Where'd you apply? I applied to Harvard, Princeton, Yale, Stanford. And it seems that in a lot of minds, those are the only schools in the U.S., these super Ivy League schools that are great, but really, really hard to get into. And then if you don't get into them, then look, go someplace else. And one of the things that we're trying to do in at the embassy is try to get the word out that there are so many other schools in the U.S. where you can get a great education, see the U.S. and get a terrific diploma. And Harvard, Yale, Princeton, those are great schools, but there are thousands of others that would love to have you. And so please talk to us if you are interested. Let me hear again, who wants to go to the U.S. to study? A few. So we could almost like double this number today.
Yeah.
But
if everybody in this room goes,
we can make a dent on this. So please do apply and keep an open mind, because there are some great schools out there.
Absolutely. And actually, now that you're in Ad America, you know we're here, right? We have education advising in Ad America itself, in person or virtual. You can come anytime and sit with an advisor to talk about what you want to study, where you want to go, how to finance your studies, how to write an essay, how to apply, and all of those other aspects of getting to one of those great institutions in the United States, still the top universities in the world, and so many of Indonesia's top business leaders, political leaders, civil society, scientists studied in the US and took advantage of those opportunities and brought that knowledge back here to Indonesia and helped Indonesia grow. So hopefully you too will get the chance to study in the United States and continue that very strong tradition of educational exchange between our two countries. We'll go to the next question, which I think is our last one, right?
Last one.
So that's our last one. Yeah, yes. So with that, I wanted to take some time to actually open it up to everybody here. As you are students, I'm sure that you have lots of great questions for Chargé Kleine. So if you have a question, please raise your hand. And for our online audience, also, if you have a question, type it in. We're compiling them, and I will get it right here, and I'll read it out for you so that we can answer the online questions as well. But let's start with somebody in the audience. So who's got a question?
I think we have
right
one.
Up here in the front. That used to be me in the front row always.
I would like to say hi. My name is Scarlett, and because I'm a law student, so this might be more legal-based than diplomacy-based. Okay. So seeing that there has been instance both in America and Indonesia, both in regarding overturning the rules that governs its people, such as Roe v. Wade being overturned by Supreme Court, and the recent amendment to Indonesia Constitution regarding the presidential nomination requirements, do you think that there are ways for the people to maybe influence or fight back in a sense against these decisions that are legally made so far above the bureaucracy, yet very much affects that people? Well, thank you.
Sure, great question.
Great question.
Wow, applause for that. That was a terrific question, and I don't want to go too far into Indonesian law and procedure, but for the U.S., the way it works, Supreme Court, that's the law of the land, and they what the Supreme Court says is going to be the final word on the law. But who makes the law? The Congress, and that's where the democracy kicks into play. Where if enough citizens vote for representatives in Congress that will make a new law, then that's the law that the Supreme Court interprets. So the way it would work would be if enough citizens say, I don't like the way the Supreme Court ruled, vote for people that believe the same thing, make a new law, then that's the law that the Supreme Court has to enforce. That's the way it would work in the US, and a healthy functioning democracy plays out the will of the people. Thank you.
you.
Yeah, we call this actually in the U.S. checks and balances, right? Our different branches of government, our Supreme Court, our executive, our presidential, and our legislative. So the way our Constitution was written was to make sure that there's a balance between those different parts of government. So our legislator passes the law, and then the Constitution, the court interprets that in line with the Constitution. So there's a balance. So we have in our democratic system, and each democratic system is different. So I'm not sure in Indonesia how that works exactly, but similarly, using the legal frameworks we have, we can make changes to those types of regulations.
Yeah.
That's an excellent question.
Awesome.
I will take one from the online audience. So this is from Zulfa. Hi, Mr. Klein. Can you tell us about the biggest challenge from being a lawyer to a diplomat who works in the Foreign Service? So that transition.
The biggest challenge was paying rent. Yeah, the pay is better being a private sector lawyer, that's for sure. But no, the challenges of serving as a diplomat versus a lawyer are, let's see, a lot of ways they're similar, because I feel like as a lawyer, you're representing a client, and every client has the right to a defense or the best advocate they can possibly have, and as a lawyer, you're in that client's corner. As a diplomat overseas, you're representing your country, so in some sense, you are advocating in that way. But with a lawyer, you're kind of a hired gun, and with representing your country, I feel very strongly about what the United States stands for, and again, that's democracy and human rights and being able to support free and fair elections, and that's something that I've never wavered on. And so in my advocacy over the past 25 years as a diplomat, I feel really, really good about that, and that hasn't been a challenge. And as a lawyer, that was something I sometimes struggled with. And so there's some differences and some similarities too. But another really, really insightful question. Thank you.
Yeah, great question. Thank you for Zulfa for that question. Other questions from the group here today? In the back here? Yeah.
Okay, thank you. Good afternoon to Mr. and Ma'am. I would like to ask about my big dream to become international lawyers, especially in America. Because that, I would like to ask about, do you think it is possible for Asians or especially Indonesians people in law to be able to compete to become international lawyers? Especially in America, like how much the chance to us can be the international lawyers? And then what terms and conditions must we meet or fulfill to get a license to practice law in America as a lawyer from outside Europe, like in the big firms like Skadden law firms? Thank you.
There are tons of opportunities to be an international lawyer in the U.S. And when I was in law school, we had international lawyers who were in school with us, and the process for them to practice in the U.S. was the same for us. And so they were studying for the bar exam, whether it's New York or California or Maryland's the bar I took. And they study, they take that bar exam, and they'll be licensed to practice in that jurisdiction. There are other arrangements that law firms have also for for lawyers that aren't members of that local bar to have of counsel or some other different types of arrangements. But for those at those big firms, a lot of times the lawyers are going to take that local bar exam and just be full-fledged lawyers as members of the bar. So lots of opportunities. And as we talk about the relationship of comprehensive strategic partnership and all the trade and economic development that we're looking at in the future of our two countries, there's going to be a lot of growth there. And there are going to be a lot of companies, there are going to be a lot of law firms, they're going to be looking for lawyers like yourselves who have the expertise in navigating the legal systems here in Indonesia or for U.S. companies. So I do think the market's going to be great for all of you in this room if that's the course that you want to take. So thank you.
So another question from our online audience from Azhar. Hello, I am also currently studying law, but I want to be a diplomat. What advice would you give law students if they want to be diplomats?
The advice I would give people, whether they're law students or med students or any type of student, IR, is just follow your passion and be curious and travel as much as you're able to, but read as much as you can and be passionate about what you do. And that's the advice that withstands the test of time. It really does. And as long as you're passionate, then you can make that transition or just go straight ahead to wherever your hopes and dreams take you.
Do what you love and love what you do.
True. True.
Another question from the audience on this side here.
Good afternoon, sir. So first of all, this is a simple question because overall, like I say, the question and it's quite interesting. I want to ask about the climate change. So we know that the world is now preparing for global warming, and which is very real. Even Indonesia has felt the impact of a global warming. And then there are many causes. The United States itself has contributed to reducing carbon emission and like transition energy and others. And then is there any advice that can be given to the Indonesia government towards reducing carbon emission? And for the energy transition itself, Indonesia has already done. And is there anything else that can be done to reduce carbon emissions, specifically that can be done by every country in the world so that the achievement of carbon emission reduction can be achieved? Thank you.
Thank you. Great. And that's really the million-dollar question, isn't it? You know, if we can get that right, that's going to make all the difference in the world, literally. And we think we're getting close. You know, there's a slide up there before about the acronym of CIP, the Comprehensive Investment Policy Plan, our planning document, and that's the intent behind that was to try to get that balance right. Because again, you can't just turn off all the coal-fired plants. That would clean up the air right away, but you need to figure out that transition because you have to keep the economy going. And to get the balance right to renewables, we know the renewables is the way to go. We've seen how just in the past 10, 15, 20 years, the cost of putting up solar panels has dropped 100, 200, 300%. We know that the more we study wind, the more we study geothermal, the more we study hydrogen, the more we study nuclear, the more energy options that we have to get into the mix, and the quicker we get to where you're going. And so what we're doing with SIP is mindfully going down that path to get the balance right. And we've pulled together some of the best minds in Indonesia, the best minds in the G7, the best minds in the Asia Development Bank to try to get that balance right. The world's watching what's going on here because we know that if Indonesia can pull it off, you know, there's hope. And I've got a lot of hope that we're going to do it. And it's going to, again, the world is at stake, and we've got to get it right. And I think we're taking those first steps now. Thanks.
Thank you very much. Let's take another question from the audience. Yes, right here.
Good afternoon, everyone. I am Cinta, and I also a international law student from batch 2022. So as I know, you're also not working as a lawyer, but also as a diplomat. Probably I will just ask about diplomatic. So my questions is, what diplomatic collaborations is the U.S. Embassy currently prioritizing in Indonesia to strengthen the bilateral relations and share the challenges? Thank you.
Thank you very much. I'd love to start that answer with Waisili.
Oh, yeah, that's a great one.
Waisili is, anyone here familiar with Waisili? This is one. Are you a Waisili alumna?
3.
Yeah, terrific.
Okay.
So, what's Waisili?
Oh, you did the academic.
academic fellowship program.
You participated in the
Yeah, and the regional worship about the indigenous people. That
Perfect.
time back in 2020, if I'm not mistaken.
Wonderful. Thank you.
Fantastic. The Waisili program, the Young Southeast Asian Leadership Initiative, is one of the programs that we have to promote the knowledge sharing and relationships among all the Southeast Asian nations and the U.S. on issues that matter, such as indigenous relationships or climate change, and building those bonds at youth levels is so critical because that's the future. And that's a big emphasis of what we're doing at the embassy, as well as regular senior level exchanges of meetings. That's important. But Waisili is the sort of program that I think that I get real excited about. It's been 10 years now. We have an anniversary coming up,
Yes.
right?
So the Young Southeast Asian Leaders Initiative, Waisili. If you don't know it, you should. And you should be part of it. It is in its 10th year. It was started under President Obama to build up the leadership skills in civic engagement, entrepreneurship, education, combating climate issues among youth across Southeast Asia, 11 countries across Southeast Asia for 18 to 35-year-olds. And so now 10 years in, we have this huge network of over 160,000 members across the region. 39,000, more than 39,000 of them are from Indonesia. And you can join this network, right? This is an initiative that the Obama administration started that has continued on for 10 years that we anticipate is going to continue on for decades to build up skills for young people to create connections internally within Southeast Asia and between Southeast Asia and the United States, recognizing, as your question asked, how are we dealing with global issues? We're dealing with them by connecting to each other and sharing knowledge and experience and working together to combat those issues. And Waisili is one of the strongest, largest initiatives that we have in that area.
Yeah, 100%. We do a lot of work in conference rooms and meetings and things like that, but it's Waisili, programs like that just get people talking to each other. That's the future of diplomacy, and that's what's going on today in Indonesia.
I'll take another question from online. So from Fiona. Hello, Mr. Klein. Since you have been... Is that your question? Hello, Mr. Klein. Since you have been to several different countries as a diplomat, how do you quickly adapt to the different countries you're in? Thank you.
Thanks. I think the best way to adapt is study language. And that's something that I've always tried to do for every country that I serve in. And please don't quiz me. My Bahasa Indonesia is just terrible.
You could try.
It's terrible. It's terrible. No. But when you study language, it gives you so much insight, not just for how to get around, but just the mindset, the culture, what's important to a particular society. And that's the best way to start jumping in. And then just to get out and to travel and to eat the street food and to talk to the people and do what people like to do, whatever country you're in. It's a full immersion, but that's the way you do it. And that's the way to get out of the bubble. And that's the way I think that diplomats best serve their own countries, by being able to understand the country they're in, to be out there.
It's what we call the last 3 feet, right? To be close to the other people and get to know them. Exactly. That's what we do every day here in Indonesia, and we're very lucky to be able to do so. Another question from our audience here, back here.
Thank you for the chance. My name is Tuku Alban Altair, and I'm majoring in law batch 2023. So as we know, America and Indonesia have lots of problem in regarding the traffic, right? Because the car-centric problem. So by any chance in the future, is there any policy that we could solve the problem of the traffic itself? Thank you very much.
So can I just clarify, your question is that there's too much traffic or the issue of cars in general?
The issue of cars in general.
Cars in general, okay.
And also the traffic.
Okay. Both big issues that we have to tackle. Okay, how do we reduce the use of cars and how do we get rid of the macet?
Is this because I was late today? I'm sorry. Traffic's tough. In a big city like this, traffic is tough. I love seeing more and more people using public transportation, and that's going to be the answer to the big cities of the future. And my eyes are open, and I'm taking notes because it's a problem that big cities have everywhere. I'm from DC, and I've noticed that in the past 10, 15 years, a lot more people are riding their bikes. There are more bike lanes. It's become a more friendly place for people to get in on their own by bike or running and things like that. That's probably the best direction to go until we all get electric vehicles. And that's going to help the pollution. But as far as traffic, it's going to be, I think, people using public transportation or bicycles or things like that.
And building city infrastructure in such a way that supports that, right? Like the expansion you see here of like the MRT and sidewalks so people can walk, and really a personal choice of choosing to use alternative transportation rather than cars. Absolutely. We can all make a big difference, but also on the policy level, there can be big differences and changes. All right, another question. Okay, you've been waiting for a long time right here.
All right, thank you for the opportunity. I'm Nidisha Correa Bello. I'm a student at President University, but my concentration is actually corporate law. But since this is such a very good opportunity to ask directly a lawyer that transitioned to become a diplomat. So the first question is, examining the legal foundations of the comprehensive strategic partnership, could you elaborate on the specific legal frameworks and agreements that underpin this partnership between the countries, and how these legal aspects contribute to strengthening the diplomatic ties and the cooperation? And the next question is about, since we do have a dream to study in America one day, so probably the question is about, given the distinct about the legal systems between Indonesia and United States, which United States using the common law system and Indonesia using the civil law system, how can the both nations share the motto that we've just mentioned before, for instance, like unity and diversity, and uphold the democratic principles? And how does the U.S. legal education system embrace diversity and democratic values? And how might this integration be relevant or challenging for a law student transitioning from Indonesia's legal system? Thank you.
Great question. Yeah, for the first one on the comprehensive strategic partnership, both countries really wanted to make sure that this comprehensive strategic partnership, CSP, was going to be something meaningful, something tangible. Because a lot of times countries get together and they'll make a big joint statement and say, we want to do this, but there's nothing there. And so what we're doing now, literally this week and next week, is finalizing a plan of action, which is a much longer document that says specifically what we're going to do, what meetings we're going to have, what we want to achieve in a 5, 10, 15-year time frame. And that's going to be signed, we hope, next week in Kemlu, and kind of get that on the table. And that will give us a direction that I don't know if it's going to be enforceable in court sort of document, but something that's going to be a roadmap to the future of putting some flesh on the bones of the CSP. So that's what we're thinking for that. On the issue of the legal systems of a common law versus the civil law system, very different, as all of you know. And after studying law in the U.S. and the common law system and reading so many cases that, my head is just spinning full of cases, I really was wishing I could live in a civil law country where I could just memorize the law and it's just clear. But I know in a civil law country, it's not always clear either. And there are a lot of subtleties to it and gray areas. And that's where all of you step in, because you all are going to be the bridge between those two systems. The systems aren't going to change, but they're going to need people that are able to interpret from one system to the other and figure out when companies come here or companies go there, what do we do? you all have the answers. So for those of you that don't become diplomats, keep studying the law because we're gonna need you.
We're gonna need good lawyers
We're
too.
gonna need good lawyers. Thank you.
Okay, and another question from the audience, I think. Okay, we're here.
Okay, thank you for the opportunity. I have a question regarding the collaboration between USA and Indonesia. You've already mentioned about how USA and Indonesia are doing things together in a lot of sector.
Yeah.
And as we know how big sector are in Indonesia and how many potential this country have. In your opinion, what kind of sector that Indonesia has never established with another country that would have been great and have a lot of potential when it comes establish a relationship with USA itself? Thank you.
A sector that's not as developed yet, an area that we want to expand into that Indonesia hasn't developed a relationship with the U.S. yet? Is that the question?
Yes, and or maybe yes, just a general sector that doesn't have any relation with another country, but what kind of sector that if it established with America, it would have been great.
Okay, so very
Thank you.
aspirational. Where would we like to maybe see growth
Okay.
that we don't
thank
have
you.
yet? Thank you.
Entertainment. Entertainment is it.
Entertainment, yeah.
And there's so much here that could go big in the U.S. if Americans only knew what was going on in Indonesia in terms of film, in terms of music, in terms of dance. You know, there's so much. And Indonesia is such a big country. It has an ecosystem that can support itself. And so you have people, you have musicians, you have artists, you have writers who are doing very well here just in an Indonesian market. But if they were able to get into the U.S. market and increase the exposure, then it could take off. There's no reason why K-pop just has to be Korean. You know, there are plenty of talented musicians here who could tap into that same enthusiasm that we're seeing in the U.S. now for K-pop and you know, really make it big. So we haven't seen that yet. But I think it's a matter of time. And they're going to need intellectual property lawyers also. So keep studying IP. But I think that's the big opportunity. What do you think?
Yeah, no, I would agree with you that that's a huge area of growth. And I can say, having worked with several American companies in this, what we call, right, creative industry area, there's a lot of interest in coming into Indonesia. And for those lawyers out here, part of the issue is understanding the regulatory framework that Indonesia has because it is very different from the United States. Intellectual property law, labor law, how do you actually film something in Indonesia and use working with the local directors and the local talent and all of that, and then how do you produce that between Hollywood and Jakarta, right? Film companies are particularly interested and already have started expanding in Indonesia, so absolutely spot on. The creative economy, creative industry is an area where there's so much potential between our two countries because we have really strong industries independently. So you can only imagine how much more excitement and growth there could be when we connect the two of them together. Absolutely. Another question from our online audience. Riza asks, how did an education in law prepare you for a career in diplomacy? What additional skills might be necessary to succeed in the diplomatic field?
The educational law and practicing law was helpful in the State Department because, you know, oddly, the way we write as State Department officials is pretty similar to legal writing in terms of trying to be clear, trying to be concise, and trying to make your points known and in the best way possible. And so just some of the simple basics and fundamentals of writing a brief are very transferable to the sort of work we do in the State Department that our counterparts here in Indonesia no doubt do in Kemlu. And having that written communication and the oral communication as well, where you're talking with senior officials for a short period of time and you have to make your case known, that's very similar and transferable to when you're before a judge. The judge only has a little bit of time. You have to be clear. And when we're talking to our bosses, it's the same thing. And so it definitely is these are two fields that have very transferable skills.
Yes, and any additional advice that would be specifically for diplomats, like in addition to what you study in law?
Again, thinking of my private sector experience, when you're in the big law firms, you tend to come in as a first or second year associate, and you'll be like a litigation associate. You'll work on all sorts of different types of cases. And then as you're there 2, 3, 4 years, you start to specialize. You're there 5, 6, 7, 8 years, and you're really micro-specialized. And then you're there 20 years, and you're the best in the world in this tiny little area of law. And I think of a diplomatic career where you come in, and most of us start in the diplomats on the visa line. That's something that the State Department does. They put you out somewhere, and you're interviewing people for visas. And that's kind of like the narrow part of what we do. And then each year you're in the service, you tend to do something broader and broader and broader. And so it's almost like a pyramid upside down in the world of diplomacy. In the field of private sector law, it seems to be that pyramid's like this. And again, I don't mean to be talking you all out of being lawyers. That's not my intent at all. But that was my experience in a big law firm. Thanks.
Yeah, great. Any other questions from the audience here? This side has been very quiet. I'd like to see a question from here for the next round, but over here. Yeah.
So, hi everyone. My name is Elisa Lobato, and I'm an international law student. So, since I'm an international law student, I would like to ask a question that is has a relation correlated to legal landscape and also with international law itself. So, as a diplomatic, how would you navigate the legal landscape of the Indonesia-U.S. relationship, particularly in regards to intellectual property rights and data privacy, in order to ensure compliance with international law and also to protect the interests of your startup, while also fostering the collaborations and mutual benefit between these two nations? Thank you.
Sure, great question, important question. Our job in the embassy is to facilitate those discussions. We're really careful about not giving legal advice, because that's something that I'm a lawyer in the U.S. I'm not licensed here, and none of us in the embassy are licensed here. So sometimes companies will come to us and say, I've got this great idea, and I want to invest, and I want to do this. And we can facilitate and make introductions for them to meet local business associations, or even local, we can give them a list of like local law firms that might specialize in intellectual property or whatever they're interested in. But we try to stay out of giving that specific sort of advice. But we do want to encourage the conversations to take place. And so that's the role that we mainly take.
Thank you. And actually, I realize we are running out of time, so that has to be our last question. I'm sorry. But before we wrap up, if you have any last thoughts or words you'd like to share with the group before we finish up for today. And again, thank you so much, President University, for coming to At America today. We hope to see you here again soon.
Let's go jump out of my chair one more time and thank everybody for the great questions and the engagement and the real thoughtful exchange that we've had today. Please keep in touch with us at the embassy. I'm so excited to see so many people interested in studying in the U.S., learning about the U.S., and working together with us to build the U.S.-Indonesia relationship, because I think the future is so strong and so positive. The future's bright. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Once again, can we give a big round of applause to our speaker and moderator for today? And the last, if you have interest to do any collaboration with us, you can visit our website, www.atamerica.or.id. You can click collaborate with us and submit your greatest idea. Also, to keep updated for our next amazing events here in At America, you can follow our social media. We have on Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, YouTube, AT America. Also, stay tuned with us for the next session of our series, Meet the U.S. Embassy. With that, my name is Patricia Elizabeth, and see you at the next At America events. Bye-bye.